Greetings and welcome. My name is Aaron Craig with Let'sLearnThisTogether.com. And what I want to talk about today is just the experience that I'm guessing you've had, and I want to validate that experience and talk about my own past experiences. And I want this to be kind of as candid as possible. So I don't have a script written out. I'm doing this from the top of my head, but I want to talk about what I have experienced in terms of learning to program, learning to code, make games, develop websites. I kind of do all of that stuff. And if you don't know, I actually went to school for computer science, but I've actually gone to several different schools for several different subjects. And that's going to play into this video. So as the title suggests, learning to code can be an incredibly frustrating experience. Just take a look at my shirt. My wife got this for me, and I think it sums it up perfectly. Learning to code and program and game dev and all of that can be an incredibly frustrating experience, even if you know what you're doing, but especially when you're just starting out, it can get really annoying because you try to do something and it doesn't work. You try to follow a tutorial and it just doesn't make any sense. You watch these videos, you do these things, and it just doesn't add up, and you just left feeling frustrated and annoyed. And I'm experiencing this right now. I'm actually developing a mobile app, and so I'm having to learn Xcode and Swift and a whole new set of programming language. And I've spent 3 months learning to code in Swift, and for those first 3 months, I had no idea what I was doing. Things were not working, and I did not understand any of it. But after a little while, sometimes a long while, it can be weeks, months, maybe even years, as I will talk about in a little bit, there's that moment that programming and coding and really any technical thing you're trying to do, there's a single moment. Maybe you can remember it, maybe you can't, but there's a moment when it finally all clicks. I call it that Eureka moment. I had it just a few days ago when I was actually watching a video on something to do with Swift and programming a mobile app, and I realized that I had actually watched it before. I probably watched it a couple weeks or maybe a few months before, and I had left it because I had no idea what it was talking about or how to do the dozen different things that the person didn't even bother explaining because they were so fundamental and basic. I didn't know any of it. But now coming back to that video, I'm like, wait a minute, I've heard this voice, I remember him saying this, and I'm actually following along and understanding it perfectly. And that's because coding is so frustrating when you're starting out because your brain doesn't know how to think about it. It just doesn't know how to compute all of those different things you have to do. It's a whole new way of thinking and learning and doing that when you're starting out, your brain just sometimes can't get it. For some people, it takes a very long time. And that's where my story kind of comes in. So I went to a school for computer science originally. I think it was back in like 2014. I went to that school and I was like, I'm going to become a programmer. I really like doing this. I might do game development as well, but I want to learn how to program and code. So I went to school, and the first term was all right. It was pretty tough. The language we were learning was C++, and it wasn't easy, but I made it through. And in that, I had labs that we would actually go in and we would code different projects, and overall, it was going all right. I really liked my instructor. She was really great and really helpful when I needed it. But when it came to the second term, things got much more complicated, and I started drowning in what we might call like technical debt, things that I probably should know that I didn't. And so I just started falling more and more behind. And I can remember very specifically going into lab one day, and with everything we talked about, I think it was either arrays or linked lists. We talked about how we're going to go and code some of these things. And in my head, for whatever reason, and if you know how arrays work or what linked lists are, which is just a data structure, you might find this kind of funny, is that we went into that lab and I'm like, okay, so we're going to start learning a whole new language, right? This isn't going to be C++. So when are we going to start learning linked list, or when are we going to start learning arrays as a whole new language? That's what I thought it was going to be. And I did not make that lab. I did not understand anything we did in it. And that only continued for the next few days and weeks, and I decided to just drop out. My brain couldn't connect what we were doing. I had no idea how it was supposed to work, and so I left. I dropped out of my CS course, and I decided to instead go to teaching and psychology, some other things that I really enjoy. But little did I know that programming in the back of my mind, all that information was still being processed. And it took me a long time. It took me many months. I think probably over a year from when I dropped out because I did not understand how to program arrays or linked lists in C++ to finally understanding what was going on and then re-enrolling in a new college with a new CS degree. And then things actually made sense. The classes I took were hard. We learned a lot, but it wasn't hard in the sense frustrating and not working and not clicking. It made sense, so I just had to apply myself and work harder. And I am guessing you have experienced something like that. If you haven't, well, congratulations. You might not be human. You might want to check on that. But for the rest of us, you've probably experienced the thing where it just doesn't click and it doesn't make sense. And no matter how much you work at it, you're not getting there. And I want to tell you that you are not alone. And I want to tell you not to give up. Because that experience that you're having, that frustration, well, it's going to disappear eventually. One day, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, maybe a couple years down the road, it will click. And when that does, when you have that eureka moment, it is awesome. It is worth all of that frustration. And it is so amazing. But if you're not there yet, then it might not seem worth it. But I want to encourage you to keep going. Don't stop learning to code. Don't quit whatever you're doing. Maybe you need to pull back, like I did. I had to drop out because I was going to fail my classes. Maybe you need to pull back a little bit, and that's okay. But don't give up. Keep going. Reach out for help. I think if I had actually gone in and gotten some help and done more one-on-one time with my instructors and the aides that were there, I probably could have succeeded. But I was embarrassed and I was frustrated and I was ready to be done. Now, I'm a totally different person and I know a lot more than I did then. But even with my years of game development, web development, teaching, all of that, I still get stuck and I still get frustrated. This is still my favorite shirt because it rings true almost every single day. Even as an intermediate or maybe a fairly advanced developer, I don't know. As a developer who's been doing this for several years, programming and coding and all of that, I still look up basic functions. I still search Stack Overflow almost every single day when I'm working on something. There's a lot I don't know how to do, and that's okay. You don't need to memorize everything to be a developer or to be an expert developer. The thing that I've learned is it's much more important to know where information is, catalog that, and then when you need to know how to do something, you just go straight to that source and then you figure it out and you can apply it. Solved. Easy, right? But that takes time, it takes experience, and if you're in the middle of this frustration moment and experience, then it can be really hard to keep pushing forward. But don't quit. Learning to code is incredibly frustrating, but it's also amazing and rewarding once you get through and you have that eureka moment and everything just starts to click. So don't give up, and I would love to hear the experiences that you've had. What have you had to go through? What has been a real struggle for you? For me right now, learning Swift is really difficult. But what is it for you? Is it game development? Is it web development? Is it art? Is it something that maybe is totally off subject from programming or like that? But I would still love to hear what you're struggling with. And if you've had any of those eureka moments, what was it for you? What actually clicked? What made it so that everything you'd been doing was worth it? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. If you want to see more content from me, please hit the subscribe and ring the bell button. You'll see more tutorials and more videos like this from me in the future. If you liked this video, leave a like and consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support and for watching me here. That's what I've got for you today though. And as I always say, keep making, keep learning, and I'll talk to you later. A huge thank you to all of the awesome people who support me over on Patreon. Their names are on the screen now, and every dollar pledged helps me create more awesome content. You can support me for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive perks like my Discord server, your name in the credits, early access to my YouTube videos and courses, and more. Check it out at patreon.com/letslearnthistogether.com or find the link in the description below and become a patron today.